Right, hello. So today on the bench we have a A00. I've been getting a lot of requests on my other video which talks about when the console shuts down unexpectedly, normally through playing a certain game. I have discovered this could be a game on heavy load. It tends to happen more likely on those, but actually when you get capacitor issues, that can actually happen on a game of light load as well, as I've discovered. So what we're going to be looking at today is a beginner's guide to how you can resolve this. And I wouldn't put a video out where I wasn't sure about the longevity of the fix, should we say, or what I would consider to be a way to resolve it, if I wasn't sure that it actually works. So I've held off on this for some time. I have done some research on it. I have discovered a conversation between two members of PSX Plays where they talk about this. One of them went to the level of scoping it, and when I say that, they look at the ripple noise coming from the tokens, and then they added the titanium capacitors, piggybacked them on, and then the noise went down, which meant that the yellow light of death went. Also, I had a situation with a customer where I piggybacked on some tokens for them at their request, and 2 years later it failed. So I took the tokens off and replaced them with rest in peace Felix tantalisers, and it got worse. It actually shut down even sooner, and I had to go to the other side of the board, which then told me actually if I'd have just left what I had there and gone to the other side of the board and piggybacked someone there, that would have done the job. So I'm now comfortable in saying, yeah, this is a long-lasting fix. We have evidence to show the noise has gone down, and it's less intrusive. So let's just be very clear about this. I have bought a lot of these rest in peace tantalisers, RIP should we say tantalisers. Let me just show you. Here, and you get them in big strips like this. Each one will replace a token, and basically we put the capacitors on here, and it's got these MMLC little caps here that go on the ends here, and that helps to mimic the exact sort of scoping that the results that they got from the NEC tokens. But let's be really clear about this. I do a lot of these, and yeah, I would say that currently my failure rate on them is 1 in 50. So it's 2% basically. It's not high, but when you consider just how rare these are, I'm not happy with it. And the boards that I have damaged are recoverable. I'll put them to one side, and we'll look at those another time. So yeah, they are recoverable. It's just basically some components that have been knocked off. But obviously, I don't want to have 1 in 50 of you guys turn around to me and go, "Tim, I've just knocked off a capacitor or something, and I can't. It's so tiny, I can't solder it back on. The unit doesn't boot." And yeah, we don't want that. We really don't want that. So the reason it becomes dangerous changing these over is because you shouldn't use heat to do it. The idea being that they're so close to the main processing chips that because everything is soldered on with unleaded solder and it has a melting point of 200, it's about 220, it's just under, but let's just say 220. The problem is when you melt the solder to take the token off, it's so close to the BGA of the main processing chips that you could melt those balls as well, and they could merge together when cooled down. They might not reconnect properly. So yeah, it's dangerous doing that, and that would cause a yellow light of death, and you would need a Reboot or a Frankenstein to resolve that. So that then leaves the option of using a very slim knife, which works. I will do another video where I have now got precautions in place to limit the chances of failure, but there still is a chance of failure there. So yeah, so as this is a beginner's guide, I don't want to start saying, hey guys, this is what you should be doing. When this method works perfectly well, you don't need to take them off, and it's far, far less likely to damage your console. Well, I've not damaged one console actually putting these on. There are some precautions you need to take and things that I've learned along the way. So basically, you are using a soldering iron. You don't need to have great soldering skills to do this, by the way. I'm going to take you through it. I started this without ever picking up a soldering iron and just watched a few videos on how to use a soldering iron. And just basically work through trial and error. But what can happen is that because you're putting a soldering iron over this motherboard, it's very easy to drip solder onto a component or something on the motherboard without realising, and that will then short that out and give you a yellow light of death. So we do have preventative measures in place to prevent that, and I'll go through that with you. And yes, you can work with a bit of heat as well. That means you're going to need something a little bit like this. All right, something like that is like 25-30 pounds. I think I paid for that a long time ago, and that's perfectly adequate for this job. You would ideally want a motherboard brace. Let me show you what that looks like. And if you have one of these, yeah, so it's that. If you have one of those, then yeah, use it. If you don't, I am going to give the method without this today. Every time I've used this alternative method, and the reason I use this alternative method is purely because I'm looking for a way that you guys can do it with a minimum amount of tools. So yeah, like it says, it's a beginner's guide. So yeah, we are going to be, I will be showing you that you can brace the board just by using what we have here, because the board is kind of braced in there at the moment, and we can use what we've got there to do that. So I'll be showing you that as well. And yeah, I have had a lot of people saying, yeah, I see you do it, I just need to know how to do it. So yeah, people with basic skills will know what I've done just by looking at that video, but a lot of people don't, and it's not a guide. I don't advertise that as a beginner's guide. So yeah, because of the delidding one being so successful as a beginner's guide, I've now decided that this is the next problem that you could get. You could do a delid, and then you could get this problem afterwards. And the reason you might not have seen the problem before is the delid runs the console cooler, and because it runs the console cooler, the NEC tokens that are failing don't get the heat required to turn them from a failing token to a working token. Let's just be really clear about this. When the tokens are failing and your console is running cool, they're more likely to exhibit a failure, i.e. the game's more likely to shut down. That's why a lot of people that are running custom firmware and Webman, Webman has by default an option to keep the console under 68 degrees, runs at 25% fan speed instead of 20 off the bat, and then this keeps the console cooler. You put the game in, it then shuts down. People are like, oh, that's Webman's fault, this is some conflict with custom firmware. It isn't, it's the tokens. They're just exhibiting a failure because they're not getting the heat required to turn them from a failing token into a working token. Right, okay. The other thing that I would say, let's go through tools that you're going to need for this, and I think that's quite important. So basically, the first thing, this will give you pretty much everything that you need. Soldering iron and your hot air. So those two things are going to make your life a lot easier. You can just solder it on, but because it's a beginner's guide, I'm going to be showing you how to reflow one of the harder points to actually solder, and then solder on the other point. Sometimes the reflow works completely. The other thing I would recommend is you can get yourself an inexpensive multimeter. I think this cost me like £15 off AliExpress, something like that. So, or Amazon. And we'll be going down to the ohm setting. We'll be setting it on the 200 setting on the ohms here. Okay, so that's the setting we'll be going on to check our work afterwards. That's really important, because otherwise the only way you'll know if you've done it correctly is by turning it on, booting up and testing the console. And even then it might not exhibit the fault, and you might think it's all fixed, and then the problem comes back later. So yeah. So without further ado, we're going to get this motherboard out. We're not going to get the motherboard out completely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my tripod so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to show you that this actually does have the problem. Let's have a look. Sometimes it doesn't boot at all. Since I've put it from Syscon to, or from Webman, in Webman you can just select Syscon. Since I've done that, it boots, but if it... Oh, look, there you go. So I've just tried to run an application, and you can see straight away that it can't do it. It's giving me a shutdown. So if that happens, you would obviously press X here, but then press back, because obviously if you do all of that, it will probably run the tokens and you will then have that error again. So there's two ways. Let's first of all talk about the diagnosis, and then I'll show you how to open it, and we'll get to the fix. So the diagnosis for this is, you can just go to PS3 toolset.com and then go to the System Manager tab at the top, and then go to the bottom of that page and expand the 32 error tab. And what that does is shows you all the errors. And the reason that's important is because you're looking for error codes 1001, 1002. Sometimes you might get a 2120 HDMI fault as well, because it can't display, which is what I got on this one. So you can go there. Actually, I can't do that on this because it's got some sort of problem with the Wi-Fi as well, which I'm going to look at another time. Today we're just going to concentrate on the token issue. So the other option is to go into PS3 Advanced Tools. I'll try and run it again so you can see. So you get your USB formatted from FAT to FAT32, and you would just start PS3 toolset. Be on a bit longer now, so those tokens are getting a bit warmer. And then you select dump syscon error log, and then you select yes, and it will now dump that log and put it into a notepad format. Once you've done that, you can take this USB, pop it in your laptop. So this saves, so if your console actually boots, this saves the whole UART thing, which requires you to solder wires and do quite a few extra things. So really good that we've got PS3 Toolset that allows you to do it online through the PS3 browser, and obviously PS3 Advanced Tools as well. So let me just quit out of this one because that was the last one. We've just had a shutdown, so I would like to see what's going on there. So I'll just simply go to my File Explorer, choose this PC, go down to my USB drive, and there's lots of things on here, but I know that at the bottom it actually allows me to scroll down. We've got our SM error, that's what it's logged at as a notebook doc, and you can just see the last error there, 1002. Let's just zoom in. Right at the top, 1002, then you've got 2120, which is HDMI, then you've got 1002s. Pretty much all the way down, got 1004, a 1001, but yeah, so we've got a mixture of 1004, 1001, 1002. These all point to possible token or unexpected shutdowns. The PS3, when people say, oh, it's been shut down incorrectly, the PS3 actually has two ways of shutting it down. You can just shut it down here. Well, it's got three ways. You can shut it down here. You can shut it down like you would a computer, which is on the screen. Let's just adjust my phone so it doesn't come out of the tripod. But yeah, you can obviously shut it down by turn off system, and then you can also shut it down at the back here. Now if you shut it down here if you shut it down here just by holding it down or by the main menu, that registers it as a normal shutdown. If you turn it off here at the back, you're cutting the power. That would be like turning your computer off just by cutting the power instead of shutting it down, and that's called that's an ungraceful shutdown, should we say, and this would then see that as power cut, unexpected shutdown. So yes, and that can cause those errors as well, because we've actually seen the yellow light of death, we've actually witnessed it, we know that it's not that, we know that every time we've done it we have actually got a 1002 error. So yeah, that means that we would then need to do at least the tokens on the RSX side. I would recommend doing both, so because we're tagging on and it's less intrusive, we can tag on to the RSX and the CPU. Most people, if you're removing the tokens, would only do what's required because of the risk involved. But we're tagging on very little risk, so we might as well do both. And what that does is, if the CPU tokens are on their way out, that's going to resolve that as well. So I'm just going to, so with all of that said, I'm going to just set up this tripod so you can see what we're doing on this console, and then then we're going to go into a little bit more in depth as to what we're doing and how we're doing it. So if you're a first timer and you want to try this, then as long as you've got the tools that I've said, you've got every chance of doing this. All right, I'm just going to pause the video and I'll see you shortly. Right guys, so here we've got the console. There are some screws that you need to take out. So you've got screws like this, and you have a slightly smaller one here. So you need to take the screw out from here, 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 and then just further down you've got two small screws in here and here, okay? Don't make the mistake of leaving those, because when you lift this off, you're going to unclip it from here. That's not designed, that's not how it's designed to be done. What you need to do is take these screws out. There's a little clip here. If you just put your finger into it, you can unclip the console. There's a little ribbon here. Okay, let's just turn this off, it's on standby. You need to unclip from this. So once you've done that, and then away that comes. So what you want to do at this stage, obviously have everything unplugged. So there's no power, you can take out the controller. So you've got a little blue screw that's in here, you need to take that out, and you need to remove your hard drive. I just have a little place, a little table set out where you can put all of these parts, so you know how to put them back. Yeah, you've got to be really logical when you're doing this stuff. Take this out. This Blu-ray drive just unclips. Be really careful here. Get your fingernail or some tweezers and just slowly lift that up and then pull this out gently. This can break really easily. Once you've finished, push it down into place and clip it back down. Don't leave it up because you can then snap it off when you're working on the board. Squeeze your shoes off. Right, okay. So the next thing we need to do is take this Wi-Fi board that I've replaced because obviously this was already not working. You've got a screw here, here, here and here, and then one here. And once you've done that, you can take this off. This needs to be unclipped. So you just push this clip up and then pull this ribbon out, and then push this clip up and pull this ribbon out. Just remove those screws. Have a little pot for your screws. If this is your first time opening a console, have it laid out, mapped out on a piece of paper, exactly where the screws go, so you'll then know exactly where they go when you put them back. If you've opened the console before, then obviously just a little pot will do. So what we want to do now is remove all of these screws around the edge. So you do have one in the corner here, don't forget that, it's a slightly longer screw. This one here. Then we do have two slightly smaller screws, which I like to take out first. One there. So it is literally removing every screw so we can turn this upside down and take the back off. Be really careful with the power plate here. So what you want to do is grab hold right at the bottom, because that's where the blue tab is as well, and just pull this out. Yeah. Right, so visually check at this point that every screw is out. And then just remove this bottom off. You might want to dust it off. I tend to do this outside. So I've got to just open my window and dust it off. All of these can be left. You just need to unclip this from the back. And now what we need to do is take these 4 screws out, but put these, don't put these on your table with all your other bits. We're going to be using these in a moment. I just like to unscrew them about 4 turns each, and then 2 turns going in an anti-clockwise motion. You can go clockwise or anti-clockwise, doesn't matter. All we're looking to do here is just to remove these evenly. And then once you can figure this out, finish taking it out. So what you also want to do is remove these. I'll be replacing them, but if you're not, you can just put them on the back of this shield for now, and then put the shield to one side where you put everything else. So I'm just going to remove some dust bunnies just by using this kind of brush. There we go. Give it one little final wipe down. Right, so once you've done that, we're going to be putting these back on. So, but you can't just put them back on like this. Now, if you're somebody who's reasonably experienced, you can look to put these on like this, and then put these on top, like that. Or, which I'm going to show you today, you can just use some cardboard. So this is double wall cardboard, so it means there's a bit of cardboard here, and there's a little crinkle bit in the middle. And yeah, you can just use these like this. You don't need to tighten them all the way down. Inspect it to make sure that these are not in any way touching the motherboard, which they're not. And what that now means is that when you're working on this plate at the bottom isn't going to come away, which I used to have in the past. And also it does kind of brace it a little bit there for you as well. So let's have a look at this. I haven't tried this before, but I think, yeah, you would need to put it into the bottom part, which is plastic. And as we're running heat through this, it's just not going to work. Yeah. So that braces it as much as you can, okay? Which I found to be perfectly adequate for this. And the next stage is to talk about the capacitors. So just pause the video, let's get the capacitors, and we'll have a little chat about these. See you shortly. Right, okay, so let's talk about these capacitors. So you do want them to be 470 UF, 2.5 volts with 7 microfarads, okay, at 100 kilohertz. So what that means is that these are low ESR, 470 UF, 2.5 volts. Now, I have used one of these, and I think another YouTuber uses one of these. He basically looks to see if the ones from AliExpress are any good. And these values are true. So what that means is that these are the capacitors that you want to use. I'm just going to, you can freeze frame that. You can see there's an MPN. If you just put this number in at lcsc.com, you will find that these capacitors are about as most reasonably priced you can get. I think I got 100 here, and that cost me £34. So it's like $40, I think, for 100. So yeah, 40 cents each, something like that. That's cheap, but they're good. They work. They're also really low profile as well. They're actually quite small, which is exactly what you want for this. So that's the capacitors. Here's our motherboard. I like to put a piece of paper here like this. And you can put your capacitors and stuff on here you're going to be using. So we're going to be using 4. Right, okay, so the next step what we're going to be doing is mapping out the 4 areas where we're going to be putting piggybacking these on. So you just remove 1 so you can map it out with this and turn it upside down. So what we're looking to do, and I'm just going to zoom in for this, so I'll show you on the 1 capacitor, and then, yeah. So basically, you're going to be looking on this rail to make contact with this. Now to do that, you need to be able to see a small part of this rail, so it can't cover it. So you just need to keep moving it until you can see a small part of the rail, which I can now. I'm just not going to be able to get that in. You're not going to be able to see it, but we'll leave it like that. So you can just see a small part. You're going to need a magnifying glass. You can use that or something like this. Okay, these are quite cheap actually. Something like this you can pick up for about £7–8. And yeah, I can now put that over. It's got a light on it, and I can now see exactly what I'm doing. And I can see there's a small part of this top rail that I can see. So once I've mapped that out, so you can, if you've got a little engraving tool or grinding tool, you can use that to take away this formal coating. Formal coating, should we say? Very formal. Yeah, it's funny what you say when you know you're being recorded. So yeah, so basically, I just need to map out just at the bottom here. So I just scratch the board. You'll notice there are no traces here. And in the 4 areas I'm going to show you, there are no traces. Okay, so what I need to do is once I've done that, I'll take this away. So that's one of the caps we're going to be using. And we can just place that on our piece of paper, which is up here. And yeah, using a magnifying glass, I want to now scrape away above this. So that's the bottom. And you could see just how big these contact points are. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to map this out to make sure Yep. I'm just going to remove a bit more. Right. So what you want to do then is move to our next point, which is over here. It is dangerously close to this. I could go over more, but I'm keeping away from this here. Okay, so this will still make contact here, absolutely fine. Alright, so the next thing we do we're going to the CPU tokens, and we're going to put them in the same place. So yeah, we're going to go here. Just make sure that we're still, yeah, we can see that. Once I've mapped out where it is, I can then scrape away. Always make sure you can see just a small part of the top rail, which is great. And then finally we move over to this one here. Make sure you can see a small part of that top rail, which is fine. And then just map it back into place. And if it's not right, you feel you need to actually scrape a bit more, do so. Yep. Okay. Right, so once you've done that, we just want to prepare this. So I'm going to go back to the these ones here, which is the RSX tokens, and yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to get some flux. So you are going to need flux. You can use Kimbo flux or anything like that, it's absolutely fine. It doesn't have to be high quality. I'm going to need some isopropyl alcohol and some cotton wool buds. I'm going to put it all in the description, everything that you're going to need. You just want to put some flux on the point that we're going to be tagging onto and the ground point that we've made. And you're going to want a soldering iron with a large tip. So something like this, that's quite a large tip as you can see. And you want it clean. So I use like copper wire wool, which is what people use, and then I do wipe it on a wet wipe with isopropyl alcohol to make sure it's clean and there's nothing else on there. The other thing you're going to need is leaded solder. Just something like this. And the reason is because this will melt at a lower temperature than everything else on the board. So when we actually melt this, nothing else gets melted. Right, that's the theory. It's worked so far. I've done quite a few, so don't worry. So with your chisel tip, put some solder on there, and then just wipe it over it like that. Then get your isopropyl alcohol, so I use this. Your cotton wool bud. I'm just going to put some isopropyl alcohol on the cotton wool bud. Then I'm just going to clean it because the flux does actually make quite a lot of black residue. So always keeping our work clean. And you can see now that that ground point there, it's got a nice bit of solder on it. Clean your tip. Get your wet wipe which has got isopropyl alcohol on it and clean it again. Go back into the brain. And then we want to do that again. This time we want to get, I can't see, here we go. So we just want to get a little bit of solder on this end point as well. Okay. Cotton wool bud and isopropyl alcohol. And we're going to clean it. And we're going to do that on the other 3 tokens as well. So you've got your camera there, so I might as well show you on this one. Mind you, I might have to move the board. Now, you do move this board, and you can turn it like this. You can still see what I'm doing, yeah. So when you do need to turn it, do that. You have to be comfortable doing this. So for example, I am going to be turning the board just by putting a little bit of solder into this point because it's just, I'm right-handed, it's easier for me. Also, I don't want to be getting any solder on that point there. So the first thing I need to ensure is that point does not have any flux on it, which it doesn't. And it's only where the ground point is that does. So if it's got flux on it, the solder will find a way of getting to it. Yeah, we'll clean our soldering iron. I then just put it onto a wet wipe with IPA. So the soldering iron is almost clean, like this. And we get our solder. We put it on the soldering iron. Then we create our ground like that. And we give that a clean. You can see, you can't see the copper anymore, it's completely covered. And repeat the process. Go into your sort of like wire wall, copper wire wall, then onto your wet wipe with some isopropyl alcohol on it, just to make sure it's completely clean. Then put solder onto the tip. That's it. Be careful of this here, these components here. They're really important for the voltage of the RSX. So if you feel comfortable taping this up, do so. It's just I've done it a few times. I would say that, yeah, it's a good idea if you've got some heat tape. Then you can do that. So then we're just going to do the same here. I'm going to turn the board around. We've got to get to the other side of the token. And we are just repeat and rinsing. So I'm going to do that exactly what I've done on these two, and I'll see you at the next stage. Right, okay, so yeah, as you can see, let's run through that all fine. Let's just resume this.
Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen, baby, I know this one. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know.
And the tapes are recovering fine, so after a dealer, this will even be even better.
I know. Sarah. Danny. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby.
Right, okay, so let's just pause it there. So basically, you've seen it just run a game. You saw that it shut down just trying to run an application, so running a game would have been absolutely out of the question. It couldn't run a game anyway because the driver failed as well, so I had to replace and remarry the Blu-ray drive. But once I did that, after what you've seen me do, the actual tagging onto the NEC tokens with titanium capacitors, everything is working absolutely as it should be, and that is the method I would use, especially if you're a beginner and you don't want to start getting a knife out and prying things off your motherboard. The only other thing to do is say do it with heat, but it's going to have to be extremely controlled. You're going to have to take a lot of precautions, and you are going to have to heat that motherboard up to about 220 to get the NEC tokens off. Now, I've done that in other videos, but I must say that sometimes it failed and I never knew why. I could never work it out, and it does look like that's what it is. You know, it's just heating it up to that amount. Maybe on a motherboard brace it would be okay. I might try that out on a few other consoles, not backwards compatible ones, just to check. But why do all of that when you can just tag them on like the way I've just shown you? They are firmly on. Once they're on, they're firmly on. They're not going anywhere, and it works absolutely fine. You know, after 2 or 3 years, if it fails again, you just need to put a couple more onto the other side of the board, and you're good. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if there's any questions, just pop them in the message. Take care. Bye.